I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, my next guest was a lead attorney in the Madoff scandal. She sued, actually, J.P. Morgan. Bernie Madoff had a $64.8 billion fraud. He could not have done it alone. And, of course, it's been reported that J.P. Morgan has paid fines to avoid criminal prosecution. I'm talking about the author of this book. It is J.P. Madoff, a play on J.P. Morgan, and it is Helen Chaitman and also her co-authors Lance Gotthoffer. But I have Helen on. Helen, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for having me.
Just a little continuation of this. Lawrence Kotlikoff wrote, every American with a bank account or a credit card should read this book, J.P. Madoff. And the reason why is because of the criminal activity. I want to start with what they were essentially laundering money, correct? I mean, tell me about the actual charges they paid to get out of.
Well, J.P. Morgan Chase was the subject of a criminal complaint. Now, the complaint was not against the individuals who were responsible for this, but the bricks and mortar were charged with criminal violations of the Bank Secrecy Act, which is a felony violation. And J.P. Morgan Chase disgorged a small percentage of the profits it made on the Madoff relationship, and the government called it quits. Nobody was fired. Nobody disgorged bonuses. They just went on doing other crimes.
Is this book, is J.P. Madoff bad, or is it like William Black, who I've had on the show, Professor Black, an expert in white-collar crime, that the banks are just criminal organizations? They're just all of them making money by fraud.
They are, and they do it regularly, all of them. I could have written this book about HSBC or Bank of America or Citigroup. All of the banks, because the government has encouraged them to do this, all of the banks have been operating like criminal enterprises.
In the Madoff case, and this was one of the stunning facts that you brought out, that, am I getting this right? People would get a statement, and it would say, I have Citigroup or Citibank, and I have Bank of America, and I have Apple and Microsoft and U.S. Steel, and I've got Amazon. And did they not have any securities?
Madoff had a group of people, a small group of people, who were grossly overcompensated, who would just make up the statements after the fact.
They had no stocks.
They had no stocks. They just had pieces of paper saying they had stocks.
So it wasn't this is stunning to me. It wasn't a fact of, well, we bought stocks and we weren't very good stock pickers.
No, they never bought the stocks. Madoff never bought the stocks. He just kept all the money. And in fact, that's why J.P. Morgan Chase liked him as a customer, because he kept on deposit billions of dollars. And J.P. Morgan Chase was free to use that money for its own purposes.
That to me is outrageous. I mean, this seems like a slam dunk case. You're an attorney. You're suing J.P. Morgan, for their basically culpability and their helping of Bernie Madoff in this. Why didn't the government, take him and put him in jail instead of suing the chairs and the tables and the desks and the buildings?
Well, we have a president who doesn't believe that criminal bankers belong in jail, and he appointed an attorney general, Eric Holder, who had this nonsensical rationalization that the banks were too big to put in jail. In other words, J.P. Morgan Chase, America's biggest bank, which does business with 50% of American households and 80% of Fortune 500 companies, should keep all the criminal bankers because it wouldn't be able to operate without them.
This makes the system incredibly fragile. I know that the fraud, the crime, is not robust. It makes it fragile. In another coming financial meltdown, that a lot of people a lot of big money managers are warning and worried about. They're buying gold. They're doing all this other stuff. Is it a good place in the next financial meltdown to have your money in one of the big banks in America, whether it's J.P. Morgan or Goldman or Bank of America or whoever?
I don't think so. I'm a supporter of the small independent banks because they haven't gotten the idea that you make money by making believe you're a mobster. The Second Circuit just yesterday reinstated a complaint on behalf of investors relating to the criminal violations of the antitrust law in fixing the London interbank offer rate. And this involves all the major financial institutions. And the Second Circuit speculated that this could cause the dissolution of all the banks. That's the situation we're in. The bankers have become such criminals that it threatens the entire economy, the world economy.
You're saying that the judge, the court said, if you guys get tagged with this, you could all go down. They could, we could have a mass implosion of the system?
There was a speculation that could happen. Exactly.
And they're in the, just for the people who don't know, the LIBOR, London Interbank Offered Rate, they set hundreds of trillions of dollars of interest rates around the planet. And you're
That's
saying
right.
that they pled guilty to this before, and then you're telling me that this is still going on.
Now this is a civil case. The government let them off cheap because the government is in complicity with them. But the investors have now sued. The lower court threw it out, but remarkably, the Second Circuit reinstated it.
Back to your website, Chaitman-Big.com, you have a wheel of misfortune. And stunning. I mean, you click on all these cases where they paid fines. I mean, they've lost, $36 billion in fines? Is that, am I getting that right?
Yeah, what they did was they disgorged a small percentage of the profits they made by operating illegally. They have admitted to violating the foreign exchange rules. They pled guilty to a felony with respect to that, to fixing the foreign exchange rates, which impacted, millions of people. They've defrauded veterans. They've defrauded credit card holders. They've defrauded homeowners. There is no group of customers that they won't defraud if they can enhance their profits. And yes, in the last 4 years alone, they have disgorged $36 billion as settlements of charges brought with respect to all these violations.
They could have bought Dell Computer and had $10 billion to spare. I mean,
but that would have been a constructive thing to do.
And you're saying that roughly $36 billion is a small percentage of the money they made?
That's right. That's why they're so profitable. That's why they can't find anyone else to occupy either president or CEO with Jamie Dimon. He's got to have both positions.
So you're talking that J.P. Morgan, through fraud, likely made many times more than the $35 or $6 billion they paid in just fines, not losses or restitution. $36 billion in fines, and you're telling me that that's a fraction of what they're really making in fraud.
Well, sure, because if you look at their financial statements, they're generating huge profits. That's why everyone loves Jamie Dimon. But, a lot of people like Carlo Gambino, too.
You compare him to a mobster. I mean, you think the bankers are, banksters is the new term, banksters, like mobsters, gangsters. You're saying that the big banks are basically mobsters.
There's no question about it. They operate illegally because they can generate huge profits by doing so. And they go from one crime to another. When they get caught committing one crime, nobody gets fired, nobody disgorges bonuses. They just take those people and put them in a new area where they haven't yet been prosecuted.
What do you think would happen in a financial calamity, another 2008? What do you think would happen with the big banks if you're a customer of any of the big banks, not just J.P. Morgan, but any of them? Are you at more risk?
The customers will be destroyed. And if the banks still have enough money to buy Washington, the government will protect them, just as it has since 2008.
You think people are going to just lose tons of money in the next bailout if the banks get into trouble? Why would they lose money? Would the banks just take their money?
Well, we've had a government policy of protecting the rich and punishing the poor. If you look at what happened with the housing market, all of the talk about helping the homeowners was just talk. The Fed was pouring money into the financial institutions, and they weren't making loans to small businesses. They were just investing that money for their own enrichment. So the banks they're not performing a public function at this point. They're really just destroying the economy for the average American citizen.
And they get away with this. Let's just talk about in your book, J.P. Morgan. They were big campaign donators to. They made big campaign donations to the Obama administration, to Obama, but also to senators like New York Senator Chuck Schumer.
No question about it. All you have to do is follow the money. Everybody has been paid off, and that's why Obama sold get-out-of-jail-free cards to everybody. That's why not one criminal banker went to jail. There's no question that they committed crimes. They've actually pled guilty to committing crimes, but nobody goes to jail for it.
I'm going to come back to this because it's just simply outrageous. They told their clients, they made up a phony list of here are the stocks that we have bought for you, and here's what they're doing, here's what they're making, here's your profit, and they never bought any, none, zero securities.
Madoff did that, and the thing is that Madoff's investment advisory banker was J.P. Chase. So J.P. Chase could see that billions of dollars went into that account, billions of dollars remained on deposit at J.P. Chase, and none of the money was used to purchase securities. And not only did they see it, they had a duty to watch it, because under the Bank Secrecy Act, banks have a responsibility to monitor their customers' accounts, to understand their customers' use of cash flow, and to report to the federal government any suspicious use of cash. So this is a...
Certainly that would fall in there.
Yep, you got it.
How much did people... I'm surprised. I mean, before I ask that question, I'm saying zero prosecutions. This would be a slam dunk case, would it not? You said you were buying stocks for people, and you didn't. Well, isn't that a slam dunk case?
That's a case against Madoff, because
yes.
J.P. Chase was simply watching the crimes that Madoff was committing and protecting him.
Well, I mean, isn't that a slam dunk case against them as well? Hey, we got a fund. We got a $64 billion crime, and they're watching. He's telling people, he's a well-known figure, incidentally. He's not somebody in a closet. He's telling people he's making a 12% return, and they're saying, well, you have no stock. They know that.
Well, the thing is that J.P. Chase, the bankers, were particularly interested in this because they had someone named Norman Levy, who was such an important customer of Chase that they actually gave him a suite of offices within the bank's offices in Manhattan. It's extraordinary. I never heard of the bank doing that for anyone else. Norman Levy became a multi-billionaire investing in Madoff, and they were watching to see how he did that. They were talking about how it was possible. So in the 90s, they were realizing that this was just a big scam, and yet they kept it going.
Unbelievable. What percentage of people got their money back? You would think, and I know you're the lead attorney on suing J.P. Morgan, and you're an expert. I would just grant you expert status on Bernie Madoff. What percentage of people got their? What percentage did people get back of their money?
Not very much. You know, the total loss was $64.8 billion, and the number of people who lost money is about 65,000 people around the world had money in Madoff. And the recovery has been about $10 billion, so it's like 16 cents on the dollar. It's a joke.
You know, as a member of the press, I thought people got 80 or 90%. I thought people got made whole, but you're saying no way, no.
Well, the Madoff trustee plays with the numbers. First of all, he discounts most of the claims. And then even as to the claims he allows, he doesn't credit people with interest. So in other words, if you put your money in Madoff in 1970, you're not entitled to any appreciation on the money. The way he calculates it, he has paid some people in full. But that's because he manipulates the numbers to begin with.
So on average, about 16 cents on the dollar.
16 cents on the dollar.
That's absolutely stunning to me. How do they treat whistleblowers? The people that came forward and people that are blowing the whistle. How do they treat whistleblowers? It's in your book.
You know, the whistleblowers, in my opinion, are the true heroes of our era because they tell the truth and they are persecuted. They're persecuted by their employers. They're persecuted by the SEC. They're persecuted by the court system. It's really a tragedy.
Your summation about what's going on in America with the banks, is this like we're in a new robber baron era?
No question about it. And we can't survive this way. And I think this is why there's been such a reaction to Bernie Sanders. It really gives me hope that so many people understand what's happened. Because you won't learn this from watching the major networks. You won't learn this from reading the major newspapers. Because they have sold their souls to Wall Street.
I don't agree with all the socials that Bernie Sanders has, but he's right. I've said this many times. He's right about the banks. And the Republicans won't touch this with a 10-foot pole. I mean, they want to say we're conservative, and they'll sit there and watch these banks. I mean, at one point in 2012, they were giving the banks I don't know, 45 billion a month? A month.
They're just pouring trillions of dollars into them. And the banks are not performing any public service.
Do you bank at one of the big banks, or will you?
No.
Because you're afraid that if and when we have another, when we have another financial calamity, you're saying the big banks are going to do the worst. Is that right? Customers in the big banks, according to you, are going to do the worst?
In my opinion, they will. But in addition, I don't trust any of the major banks.
And when you say do worse, I mean, could people get wiped out in the next, with all the fraud and all the scam and all the what's going on?
If we don't have a reversal of what we're doing, definitely.
Wow, what a unbelievable! Oh, I want to get this in because you told me this in the pre-interview that nobody has booked you. I mean, this is an unbelievable book. You are an unbelievable interview. I'm with all kinds of facts. You're an attorney. You've wired this thing together. Everything in here, according to you, is some sort of a public document. You've researched this book. There's no speculation in the book, correct?
It's all documented. I've got 1,143 footnotes, and you can go to the source material. It hooks up to hundreds of thousands of pages of source material.
Yes, and your website, of course, I want to get that in there too. But I want to get the story in too about jpmadoff.com, where you can. There's all kinds of information on it. It's free. Also, you can find the book on J.P. Madoff, and I'll put a link to that for you YouTube people. I'm going to put a link for that on the site, so go to the site, and you'll scroll down to after the interview. You'll find it. But I want to talk about your media experience. I mean, this is an unbelievable book. I used to be at ABC Good Morning America. I used to be at CNN. I mean, they say your book is your hook, for a booking. And I'm like, and I'm telling you, you should be booked all over the place, but you're not. You were booked on Fox Business with Maria Bartiromo. Your only booking. How'd that go?
Well, it didn't go well. I mean, I have to be thankful that she didn't physically eject me from the 41st story window. But I had told the producer in advance to check out my website, JP Madoff, so he could understand what I'm doing. But
you're suing JP Morgan Chase. So
yeah, right.
Okay. So that clearly lays that out.
He didn't have time to check my website, and I was just brought out onto camera with Maria. And she said, and now we have the world's leading expert on representing the victims of Bernie Madoff. And Miss Chaitman, why don't you tell us what you're doing these days? And I said, well, I'm suing J.P. Morgan Chase. Now, of course, J.P. Morgan Chase is one of the major supporters of Maria's show. And she said, what are you suing them for? And I said, well, the evidence shows that they violated the Bank Secrecy Act. They committed crimes because they recognized what Madoff was doing. She said, well, why do they have an obligation to do that? I said, well, because Congress mandated in 1970 that banks have to monitor their customers' accounts, and if they see illegal activity, they have to report it to the federal government. Well, I could hear static in her earpiece, and she called what she told me was an emergency commercial. So that my 7-minute interview was 2 minutes and 46 seconds.
You haven't been called by 60 Minutes. You haven't been called by New York Times, Wall Street Journal. You haven't been called by any of the Fox, ABC,
Nobody
NBC.
will cover it. Nobody will cover it.
That's unbelievable. Outrageous. What does that tell you about our media?
It's like the emperor's new clothes. Everybody's fawning after the money. And the J.P. Morgan Chase has a lot of money to hand out. It's stolen money, but they've got a lot to hand out.
Well, here's the book, folks. You can find it on jpmadoff.com. This is Helen Davis Chaitman. She's the author of the book. She has a co-author with it as well. It is J.P. Madoff is the book. Helen, thank you for joining us today on USA Watchdog. This was a riveting interview. I'm telling you, I took very few notes because I'm sitting here listening to you go, oh, yeah, we got to take notes. That's how I can tell it's a really good interview. Hey, thank you so much, and thank you for your bravery for doing this book. What a great book. Have they, before I quote, have they threatened you in any way? Have anybody threatened you in any way?
No.
They haven't because I guess they don't need to.
They don't need to because I'm not a threat to them.
Ah, that's right. They already have it sewn up, don't they? All right. Helen Chaitman, thank you so much for joining us on USAWatchdog.com. Thank you very much for coming on.
Okay. Bye-bye.